What's up, guys? Thank you for joining me. Today, I want to talk about corrupt Judge Hannah Dugan, who was just arrested by the FBI.
A Wisconsin judge under arrest and facing charges accused of flouting federal law to help an illegal immigrant. Federal prosecutors say Milwaukee County Circuit Court Judge Hannah Dugan allegedly helped that migrant avoid arrest by ICE officers at the courthouse.
She absolutely helped that guy get away, and she deserved to be arrested. Here's what happened. ICE prefers to lock up illegals at places like jails and courthouses for one simple reason: safety. If the person they're going to deport is already in custody, we know, number one, that the guy is contained, meaning we don't have to chase this guy down the block, but more importantly, we know that he's unarmed, because in this particular case, he had to go through a security checkpoint and a metal detector before he was allowed into the courthouse. So apprehending him at the courthouse makes it safer for everybody. But liberal Democrat Judge Hannah Dugan doesn't like ICE. She loves all criminal illegal aliens just like all Democrats do. So when she found out they were there to deport a defendant in her courtroom who was there on domestic violence charges, she was outraged. I'm going to walk you through the affidavit and show you exactly how this went down. ICE identified Flores Ruiz, that's the illegal, as an individual who was not lawfully in the United States. And in January of 2013, he was deported back to his home country of Mexico by the Obama administration. So he came back into our country after being deported, which automatically makes his presence in the United States a felony. Let's continue. ICE became aware that he was scheduled to attend a hearing in his criminal case. So that's the first important distinction we need to make. He was there as a criminal defendant in his own case. He wasn't the victim of a crime, nor was he a witness. He was the perp charged with something other than breaking immigration law. And we're going to go through his charges in a second. ICE learned that the hearing was going to take place in courtroom 615 in front of Milwaukee County Circuit Judge Hannah Dugan. So that's where they went. A total of 6 agents went to apprehend this guy. 2 from the FBI, 2 from ICE, 1 from Border Patrol, and 1 from the DEA. When ICE gets to court, they met with the sergeant from the Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office, who asked that they wait until the hearing is over before they make the arrest, and of course they agreed, as this was standard practice. The agents were then allowed to proceed unescorted to the public hallway outside courtroom 615, where the defendant was set to appear. So this was the public hallway right outside Judge Dugan's room. You can see it says room 615, and those 2 double doors, they lead into her courtroom. But ICE was waiting in the public hallway. And that's the key word. This is very important. You'll see why in a minute. Now, while ICE met with the sergeant of the sheriff's department, the FBI met with the courtroom deputy and advised them that they were there to assist ICE with the arrest. Got it? So ICE advises the sheriff's department and the FBI advises the court. Again, they agreed the arrest would take place after the court appearance, so there would be no disruptions to any court proceedings. The agents then left the courtroom and took positions at different locations in the public hallway. Arrest team members reported that while waiting outside of the courtroom, a woman approached and took photos of them. It turns out that this woman was a public defender, but they refer to her as Attorney A. Let's go to paragraph 19. Team members observed Flores Ruiz arrive on the 6th floor of the courthouse at approximately 8:43 a.m. He was greeted by his attorney, and the 2 entered courtroom 615 together. So even though they see him in the hallway, they don't try to apprehend him because they had an agreement to wait until after the court proceedings. So they let the perp and his attorney walk directly into court. Now, the woman that was taking photos of the ICE agents tells the clerk that there are ICE agents in the hallway, tells him where they were seated and what they were wearing. The clerk then relays this information to the judge, who became visibly angry, commenting that the situation was absurd, left the bench and entered her chambers. So she just gets up and leaves. The defendant and his attorney remain in the courtroom, along with the state prosecutor and the 3 victims he assaulted. They were all there ready to go, but the judge just gets up and walks out. But before she did, the prosecutor, who they refer to as Attorney B, heard her say that she was going to call the chief judge before leaving the courtroom. Now, Judge Dugan, along with another judge, approached members of the arrest team in the public hallway. Witnesses uniformly reported that Judge Dugan was visibly upset and had a confrontational, angry demeanor. She then asked an ICE officer if they had a judicial warrant, to which the agent responded, "No, I have an administrative warrant." The judge responded that he needed a judicial warrant to apprehend Ruiz, which is a lie. The difference between these two warrants is a judicial warrant allows the officers to enter and search private property, but an administrative warrant limits their enforcement to public areas only. Remember I said that was important? That's why they were going to apprehend him in the public hallway, because they are forbidden from entering private areas of the courthouse. And Judge Dugan knows this. Judge Dugan demanded that the deportation officer go see the chief judge and then also order the FBI agents and the Border Patrol agents to go see him as well. So she gets rid of them and tells them to go see the chief judge down the other end of the hall. Now, this is what I believe the media is missing. Remember, she was overheard saying that she was going to call the chief judge just before she stormed out of her courtroom. Why is this important? Because the chief judge isn't even in the building. And Judge Dugan knows this, but she sent the agents there anyway to get rid of them to allow time for the illegal alien to escape the courthouse. The courtroom deputy stated that as soon as the agents entered the chief judge's area, Judge Dugan walked south down the hallway and entered a locked door near courtroom 615. This led to a non-public hallway from which she could access her courtroom and chambers. After Judge Dugan adjourned this case, the courtroom deputy then observed Ruiz and his attorney walking towards the public courtroom exit when Judge Dugan said, "Wait, come with me." Despite having been advised of an administrative warrant for his arrest, Judge Dugan personally escorted Ruiz and his attorney outside of the courtroom through the jury door, which leads to a non-public area of the courthouse. Here's a layout of a typical courtroom. This area right here is called the gallery. This is where you're supposed to be seated until your case is called. This is where the judge sits, and this is where the jury sits. There are a total of 4 doors that lead to the courtroom. This is where the judge enters and leads to her chambers. This is where they bring prisoners in, those who are still in custody. This is where the jurors enter, and behind the gallery are the double doors that lead to the public hallway. This is where ICE was waiting for him. But when Ruiz and his attorney started walking towards that exit, Judge Dugan yelled out to them and personally escorted them out the jury door because she knew that that area was off limits to ICE. And by the way, the prosecutor was never even notified that this case had been adjourned. Judge Dugan adjourned this case without the prosecutor's knowledge or participation, even though the prosecutor was in court to handle the case and even though the victims were present in the courtroom. I can tell you that in domestic violence cases, it is extremely difficult to get victims to show up in court. But they were there. Everybody was ready to go. The defense was ready, the prosecutor was ready, and the 3 victims were there ready to testify. But Judge Dugan adjourned the case. She had to adjourn the case because she knew ICE was waiting for this guy in the hallway when the hearing was over. So she sends all of the agents down the hall to speak to a judge that she knows isn't in, while she sneaks the guy out the back door, which led to a non-public area because she knew that area would be off limits to ICE. This is clearly obstructing. Thankfully, Cash's new FBI arrested her and charged her with the following. 18 U.S.C. 1071. This is what it means. Whoever conceals any person for whose arrest or warrant has been issued under the provisions of any law of the United States, any law, so that includes immigration law, so as to prevent his discovery and arrest, which he did by sending the agents to another location and then sneaking them out the back door, after notice of knowledge of the fact that a warrant had been issued, which of course she has knowledge of the warrant because she demanded to see it, shall be fined or imprisoned not more than a year. So her actions absolutely justify this charge. There is no question about it, unless you ask the Democrats or the corrupt media.
Now they're arresting judges, and the first felony criminal charge brought against Judge Hannah Dugan in Wisconsin is interfering with a legal proceeding, which is essentially what they've been doing all along.
I think this was a distraction from the first weakness on the economy.
The arrest of the judge in Wisconsin, again, not isolated, felt jarring.
They relish the opportunity to go after judges.
It's not like we didn't know it was going to be terrible, and it is terrible. He really did have a judge arrested today. Arresting a judge today. Are you kidding me?
They're making it seem like she was arrested because she ruled against Trump on some issue. No, the judge is a perp who used her power to allow a violent criminal accused of beating 3 victims, including 2 women, escape the courthouse. Judge Dugan is a criminal who broke the law, and it doesn't matter that she's a judge, because we've been told many times no one is above the law.
No American is above the rule of law. The same rules apply to everyone.
No one is above the law.
The basic concept of the rule of law in our history has been the idea that no one is above the law.
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 There are longer montages I could show you, but you get the idea. No one is above the law when it comes to Trump, but somehow arresting Hannah Dugan is off limits because she's a judge. And holding corrupt judges accountable is somehow a threat to our democracy. Here's Chuck Schumer.
They're trying to intimidate judges. This is not the first time or the second. They've said they want to impeach judges. They said they're going to go after judges who don't agree with them. That is so against the Constitution. What Trump, Biondi, and the whole Justice Department are trying to do is push that judge, threaten that judge, so the judge is no longer impartial. You cannot have a democracy without an independent judiciary, and they're trying to clip the wings of that independence.
So that's Chuck telling us how important it is for judges to remain independent, how they shouldn't be influenced, threatened, or intimidated. That was today. Here he is in 2020 after the Dobbs decision was leaked.
Republican legislatures are waging a war on women, all women, and they're taking away fundamental rights. I want to tell you, Gorsuch, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you have released the whirlwind, and you will pay the price. You won't know what hit you if you go forward with these awful decisions.
You won't know what hit you if you move forward with these decisions? That's not intimidating a judge. And we're not just talking about anybody. He's talking about 2 of our Supreme Court justices. More hypocrisy from the Democrats, right? Here's Governor Pritzker asking for mass disruption.
Never before in my life have I called for mass protests, for mobilization, for disruption, but I am now. These Republicans cannot know a moment of peace.
That sounds like inciting violence to me. By the way, if Trump did that, you know he'd be indicted again, right? But there are different rules for Trump. It amazes me that they have no problem making up fake crimes to prosecute a president who didn't break the law, but you can't go after a corrupt judge who did. Anyway, this is the left's new hero. They gave up on the MS-13 guy, the Maryland father we heard so much about, and now they're all rallying behind this corrupt judge. Not only are Democrats protesting her arrest, but some of them are actually encouraging others to commit the same crime. This is Wisconsin Democrat Ryan Clancy.
I want to be really clear that what Judge Dugan apparently did was what all of us should be doing, and that is standing up for folks in our communities who need support right now against the Trump regime more than ever.
Standing up for folks in our community? He's not just talking about the corrupt judge, he's talking about the illegal, who, remember, was there for his own criminal case. Let's see what he was charged with.
This guy was in court being prosecuted by a state prosecutor for domestic violence battery. He had beat up 2 people, a guy and a girl, hit the guy 30 times, knocked him to the ground, choked him, beat up a woman so badly they both had to go to the hospital.
She says choked, but really he tried to strangle him. And it wasn't 2 victims, it was 3. And all of them were removed to the hospital for treatment. Now here's the Milwaukee mayor. He's a Democrat, so we expect him to lie about something.
This overly dramatic arrest of a judge at a county courthouse adds to a big problem created by the federal approach to immigration enforcement. What they've done is drive away people from participating in what are legitimate courthouse activities. Now, these folks, they may be victims, they may be witnesses, civil case participants, or people who receive traffic tickets. When these folks are driven away, that makes our community less safe. These folks should be encouraged to participate in court proceedings, not being encouraged to go away from court proceedings. But that's what these actions actually cause. They're not going to participate in court cases if they fear being swept up in immigration enforcement. That's exactly the groundwork that the Trump administration has laid here in what is quite evidently an attempt to showboat. And it's unfortunate. I think it makes our community less safe. I think what happened here was just showboating. They're just trying to have this show of force, and in the process of doing this in a courthouse where people need to go for court proceedings, they're scaring people away from participating in the process. So if they are witness to a crime or something of the sort, they're not going to go and participate, and that makes our community less safe.
Okay, so he's saying that people that are here illegally who are victims of crimes or who witness crimes are going to be afraid to show up in court because they think ICE is going to be there waiting for them. And that sounds perfectly reasonable, right? The problem is that is not the policy of ICE, and he knows it. ICE only appears in court when the illegal is the defendant, not when he's the victim of a crime, not when he's a witness to a crime. And the mayor knows this. If the mayor was honest, he could have used that opportunity at that press conference to ease the fears of the people of Milwaukee and let them know that if they are a victim or a witness and they show up to court, they will not be deported. But he's not capable of telling the truth because he's a Democrat. And the media are the same way. If the people in the media were honest, they would lead with rogue judge broke the law. But they can't do that because they're just as dishonest as the Democrats. So instead, they're blaming it all on Trump. And of course, they're all using the same talking points.
We begin tonight with the escalation in the president's crackdown on illegal immigration.
Today's dramatic escalation in the Trump administration's conflict with judges.
The Trump administration signaling a major escalation in its deportation efforts.
Today, an escalation in the Trump administration's battle with the judiciary.
Tensions between local and federal authorities over President Trump's immigration crackdown escalated today.
We begin this hour with a major escalation of the Trump administration's crackdown on immigration.
We begin with what appears to be a major escalation in the Trump administration's deportation efforts.
And what is a major escalation in the battle here in D.C. over immigration and deportation.
This feels like an insane and reckless escalation from the Trump administration arresting a judge. I will tell you, you are not alone.
It's a dramatic escalation.
More aggressive moves, more escalation.
Trump's escalation of his migrant purge.
This kind of escalatory action.
This is a dramatic escalation.
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 We see an escalation.
The bottom line is this judge is a perp. She didn't just allow the illegal to escape, she helped him with complete disregard for the victims who were savagely beaten by this man who showed up in her court to testify against him. Unfortunately for them, Judge Dugan cares more about illegals who are criminals than Americans who are victims. So when you hear that Trump has somehow gone rogue and is prosecuting judges for no reason, you know that that's another lie pushed by the corrupt mainstream media and the corrupt Democrats. That's all I got for you on this one. Thank you for watching. Do me a favor, if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing. Please share the video and please comment. I read and answer all of the comments. Thank you again, and I hope to see you on the next video.
What I said from day one, you can sit aside and watch, you can argue against us all you want and protest all you want, but when you cross that line, I've said this 1,000 times, when you cross that line to impediment or knowingly harboring, concealing an illegal alien from ICE, you will be prosecuted, judge or not.